Right, welcome back. Now, former registrar of the Judiciary, Gladys boss Shollei's case is reported to be crumbling. Key witnesses fronted by the prosecution as star witnesses intended to support the charges told the court that the tender in question was above board. The witnesses say there was no irregularities in the legal suit in which Shollei is charged with abuse of office. So the Shollei case, we all know what happened, abuse of office and willfully interfering with procurement procedures or a similar charge. But now witnesses coming out to support her and saying that everything was above board. And she's maintained her innocence right from the beginning, has not wavered once.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting turn of events.
It is an interesting turn of events.
And welcome.
And welcome.
And
Joy
welcome.
Doreen Bira.
We just sneaked you in after the break.
Yes, but after, yes.
It is, yeah, indeed, it is an interesting turn of events, considering the kind of heat, she has been facing, at least for, so many months. And for her, the fact that she's standing strong and saying, you know what, I'm taking this towards the end, and I'm going to take it and see whether or not they're going to, incriminate me. I think that's what really stands out for her. Whether or not they are going to come out with, more evidence that is incriminating on her side, time is yet to tell. But I think the kind of strength she has showed so far, you cannot really underestimate that.
You can't, because she's been unwavering, as I said, and she said that it's her reputation that she wants to rebuild because everything was literally snatched away from her, Betty.
Yeah, and we have this problem in this country where an accusation is made and then we judge the person.
Right. It's like you're guilty until proven innocent.
And especially for women, let me raise that one. Especially for women. Women when an accusation is made against the character and integrity of a woman, she is literally dragged through the mud in the press by the political class. It's just, and so I find this very admirable that she stuck to her guns and she's getting her day in court. Will this change the sort of negative image of how it's a long journey?
Yeah.
Well, once a woman falls, oh my God, this country,
it's harsh.
It is too harsh.
The streets are harsh for women.
Yes.
But the issue is some people look at it in different ways. That women should be treated with soft hands, even when they're guilty. I'll give you the example of Anne Waiguru. Some actually say she could be guilty, and so there's no need to treat her with soft hands. You need to treat her with an iron hand. But then again, there is the side of where women are actually witch hunted per se, just for the fact that they are women and maybe they do not deserve to be in the positions that they're in, just for the fact that they are women. Which in one way one would argue and say, there's a bit of an imbalance in arguments. And the law doesn't seem to even recognize all of that.
But at least for what we can see in Shollei's case, for example, the litigation has really taken its course. Her legal case has been strong. We're seeing that up to in the allegations that were put forth, and we see that none of the 13 firms, there are allegations of procurement malpractices, and none of the 13 other firms that were bidding for this some of these tenders actually complained of misappropriation. So just to see that the case actually, when we put the woman card aside, the case is playing out for itself, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Joy Doreen talks about parallels with Anne Waiguru, because I think quietly Shollei has been attending her court dates and following up with the due process of the courts and trying to clear her name, whereas in other cases, other women, I know we shouldn't treat them with soft gloves or iron fists, but other women tend to try and evade the process of justice, but she has stuck to it, maybe because she's a lawyer, right almost till the bitter end. It looks like it's petering out now, but of course we'll see what happens.
All right,
with that.
Let's move on to another conversation now, and away from matters, cases and litigation. And the U.S. media is under sharp criticism over their coverage of the just concluded election that saw Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton. The media is being accused of bias and razzmatazz that missed the story of the election, that is rural whites' disillusionment with the economy. And the question we're asking today, are there lessons for the local media even as we get into the electioneering period? And I see, Joy, you are beaming.
Well, they are like a myriad of lessons that we can learn from the U.S. election. I guess first and foremost, and the one that's really stunning out, is the fact that up until the U.S. elections, a lot of people thought that opinion polls and public debates, you know, were the thing that actually determined who is the favored candidate. But seeing from what we have gone through the U.S. elections,
the shock of the
despite
century.
the fact that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, clearly that wasn't the case. And also, I think it has taught us a number of lessons in regard to over-trusting experts. You know, you have these international trade experts, you have political experts who actually give you predictions and say, you know, I think this is why Hillary Clinton is going to win the election.
Polls.
Yeah, and so when you believe what they say as gospel truth, I think you also need to, in a way, sort of...
but then what becomes your source of news? Because if these are the experts that are,
I think
you know...
what for me has stood out is the fact that we need to stop believing more the elitist talk and start to look at what's happening on the grassroots, because that's exactly where the vote is.
Right.
And we also need to consider the fact that we have today so many desktop activists who actually go online and say all sorts of things, you know, why they think so this candidate, you know, is favored against the other.
Right.
But then down to the ground, you actually realize there's a different story altogether. And so I think for me, that's what stood out. And if Kenya is going to borrow some lessons from the US election, I think that's going to be it, not to ignore the voice of the ordinary Kenyan in the grassroots.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's quite right. One of the biggest, and I'll say this, okay, they weren't that wrong. Okay, the exit, yes,
Because of the popular vote,
yes,
right?
yes, they weren't that wrong. The exit polls showed Hillary Clinton getting 47.5% of the votes, and Donald Trump getting 44%. The miscalculation was with Trump's performance. He surged forward, he got 47.8%. That was a surprise.
Yeah.
Now that's where the story is. It as they said, it happened in the rural areas.
Yeah.
And what you'll see in Kenya, this is a parallel now. What you'll see in America is that whenever there's an economic downturn, whenever there's high unemployment, especially in the rural areas, America becomes highly conservative, okay? And you'll see the similar situation in Kenya because we have so many unemployed young people. We have such a high unemployment rate, and we have such high underemployment as well. You will see a lot of conservative sort of voting. That's why you call it tribal, but actually you're just remaining within your, you know, protecting your own community, so to speak. So that's the parallel. That's what you need to look at. What I think that the journalists should do and the opinion analysts should do is take a look at the county news, okay? And
like go down to the ground.
Yes,
Don't just be right.
Exactly. Most of these county governments have a newsletter of sorts.
Right.
There are also other small publications that you'll see that are giving you information about what's happening in the county level.
Right, good point. But coming right back home, up to 1.2 million fresh graduates are churned into the Kenyan market each year. Yet this market creates just about 500,000 jobs every year. What happens to the 700,000 graduates with no jobs? Who is failing? Who? Organizations are laying off employees. Yet the economic survey of 2016 shows that the Kenyan economy is growing. What is really going on here? What is really going on here, guys? Because leave alone employment figures. When you go and go to any shop, anywhere, a kiosk, and try and buy something, the same amount of money you used to use even months ago just doesn't cut it anymore. The economy is biting in almost all sectors. Banks, the media, companies, Everready factory closing down, and that was like that was like something that we all recognized in Kenya as a brand.
Yeah.
Nakumat, Uchumi, Joy.
I think you can look at it in different ways. You know, you mentioned the Nakuru plant that's for Everready.
Yeah.
The influx of imported goods into the country could explain why a company like Everready, you know, had to shut down their plant in Nakuru. But then on the issue of unemployment, with the number of graduates we're churning out of the universities, I think we need to ask ourselves some critical questions. When you were growing up, you know, when you were asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? The first, or at least the top 5 responses were, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or maybe a lecturer or, you know. Yeah, and how many years is it? Maybe 30 years later. Let's take that as an average. 30 years later, you know, you're still being told, you know, I'm going to do medicine, I'm going to do, you know, education, I'm going to do this on campus or at the university. So just imagine how many more are being told the same thing.
Right.
And how many graduates are we getting into the market looking at those career choices? So we're having a gap. And, there's one of the reports by the World Economic Forum that said that in 10 years' time, I'm sure we're already in the 10 years that they talked about, the number of jobs that people are studying or that people studied 10 years ago are not going to exist today because the market is oversaturated.
Right.
So what do you do in such a situation? I think our governments, our decision makers and policy makers need to come together and just look at what other avenues there are to create jobs, and also limit the number of imported goods coming into the country so that we can be able to support the local manufacturing industry.
So would you also say that then if we take it back to our training institutions, are we training, our students for not for our market?
Are we training them for the job market or just training them in those traditional fields?
I think that there's a disconnect between the institutions and the reality of the economy. The sort of, like we said, the sort of aspirations children are given, even in high school, everyone wants to be, you'll grow up and get a job as a doctor. In fact, everyone who gets a straight A is expected to do medicine. If you're really smart and you have those kind of marks, you will not do medicine in Kenya. I'm just saying it because the doctors are some of the most frustrated Kenyans you'll find. So I think that there's a disconnect between the institutions and what's happening in the economy. Having said that, our economy, the economy is growing, but you know what? I don't think that the money is trickling down, as you have said.
Unless you're a politician or a policeman.
Exactly. We do have more millionaires, but it's not coming down. So I think there might be a problem with the labor laws and enforcement of those labor laws. I actually truly believe that there needs to be a change in that area.
All right. And we really have to move on now. But that's a conversation we need to have, Joy, because
we need about an
like
hour
many
to
other
talk about
Kenyans, do not understand how a growing economy means I still cannot buy,
the basic necessities
in my house. But let's move on now. And Kenya has chartered a private plane for Deputy President William Ruto's Pan-African campaign for foreign affairs CS Amina Mohamed in a move reminiscent of the 100 million shillings Hustler jet scandal of 2013. The country has launched a massive diplomatic offensive to have Mohamed replace South Africa's Dlamini Zuma as the next chairperson of the African Union Commission. Tonight we ask, doesn't the CS's record speak for itself? And is this warranting enough of this much, this budget for the campaigning?
It's just shocking that we just said we won't give the senators 1 billion, and then we do this.
Chartering a private jet.
I don't understand what is wrong with him. At least flying business class.
They said that flying commercial is more expensive than chartering a flight. This is what the government spokesman said.
Really?
Yes. He
Really?
said commercial flights to all the destinations in Africa, because some of them you don't fly direct, would be more expensive than getting this jet. And then Manoa Esipisu came and said that expect to see more of this travel because the lobbying is ongoing.
Okay, let me answer the question that Sharon has asked. Doesn't her record speak for itself? These people don't know you, so you have to lobby. They don't know. It's political. It doesn't matter what you've done really. Okay, it does to a certain extent, but it's political lobbying. Okay. I'm going to ignore the
10 seconds, Joy, on that because we are out of time.
Oh my gosh, 10 seconds. Yes, I think it's justified in that Amina Mohamed, yes, she might have a track record. She's worked with WTO and she's been the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs. Maybe some people just know her in name, but African countries as we know them, it's not so easy to get them to back you up when you're supporting something. Look at the EPA agreement. Tanzania has actually even sued. They're saying there's no way you're going to go ahead of us. So if we're dealing with these kinds of African countries, you definitely need to back her up. And whatever kind of support she needs, we just need to give it to her. I think the former Vice President of Uganda was rejected.
Joy, I'm told we are really
she was rejected. So that actually explains to you the kind of support she needs.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies, for your insights tonight. And the Twitter poll tonight, we had asked that, do you think that the naming and shaming of land grabbers will be a solution to land issues in Kenya? 44% of you say yes, this will be a solution. 56% of you say no, this will not solve anything. Thank you so much for engaging with us and for watching this this episode of News Sources. My name is Sharon Omanyi. Thank you, Betty Waitherero and Joy Doreen Bira, for joining us tonight.
My name is Julie Masiga. Next time, same time. Next week, same time, same place. Thank you.
All right, good night. I know it was so short.